Today marks the second week of the Sabbath worship series, and if you haven't figured it out, the theme of the day is rest. I told Brad earlier that I was considering emailing and making lots of phone calls Thursday and Friday and telling you all just stay home and sleep in. I'm sorry I didn't do that. Maybe some other time we'll do that, though, okay? Because we all need a little bit of rest, right? I figured I'd get way more amens than that. We all need a little bit of rest. If we haven't figured out that you need rest, if you haven't figured that out for yourself yet, I would strongly encourage you to be thinking about how you might find more rest in your life. Not so much that you never get anything done, but if you're at a place where you don't think you need rest, I'm going to tell you right now, you do. Okay? You do. It's the reason why at night you either are so dog tired you can't function, or you're staying up so late because you're thinking about what you have to do tomorrow. Okay? And so rest is super important with who we are. Last week I mentioned to you that the Ten Commandments, right? And the commandment to honor the Sabbath was the longest commandment. And so we read that today in Exodus. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. It's the longest of all the commandments. 6 days you're going to labor and do all your work, but on the seventh day, the Sabbath is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. You shall not do any work. Sons, daughters, male and female servants, livestock, alien residents in your town. For 6 days God made heaven and earth and everything there is in it, and therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and consecrated it and rested on that day. And so God even sees the value in resting. The infinite God, the all-powerful God, the all-knowing God, the God who we know that probably doesn't really need any rest because God is God and we are not. But God still chose to take that seventh day and just delight and enjoy and stop and rest and contemplate all that had just been created. And so if God could take a day and rest, why do we struggle with that? If God could take a day and rest, why do we struggle with that? That's an extremely good question. So we have this creation story. God the Father models this rhythmic design for all of humankind. Work for 6 days, rest on the seventh day. Work for 6 days, rest on the seventh day. And there's this theologian, his name is Robert Brown, and I want to share with you his words. He says this: to rest is to touch something deep within us as image bearers of God. Our brains, bodies, spirits, and emotions are all wired by God for the rhythm of working and resting in Him. Resting is to touch something deep within us as image bearers of God. Do you realize that you are created in the image of God? Realize that? And if we are created in the image of God, how much more so should we also behave like God? And rest. It's to touch something deep within us. It's to bring us back to who we are created to be. It helps us in our brains, in our bodies, in our spirits and emotions that are all wired by God to work with this rhythm of working and resting in God. So, Sabbath is not just about adhering to these ancient laws, these ancient Jewish laws that are 10 Commandments that we've been told about since Sunday school. Or maybe you're like, man, I don't know what the 10 Commandments are. And that's okay. Look it up. It's in Exodus. I promise you it's there. It's in Exodus 20. You can read them. And they're great and they're good rules to follow in life. And matter of fact, Jesus says if you follow all these rules, there's no rule or law in human history that it breaks. So it's more than just practicing a rule or a law. What it is about reconnecting to God. It's about figuring out who we are as God's created children. It's about a connection. So if we can be connected with God, if we can find a way to rest and be at ease for one day and remain connected to God, there's a whole new something inside of us that awakens, that becomes renewed, that becomes refreshed, that helps us to, when it becomes Monday morning or Wednesday morning or whatever your day is after your Sabbath, whatever day that is, it becomes something that makes us able to move forward with the rest of the week full of joy and full of hope and full of wonder about who God is and what God might be doing in the next week ahead of us, instead of worrying about how we're going to get it all done. You see, there's a big difference there when we take time to Sabbath, when we take time to rest. And so last week we talked about the first thing you have to do is learn to stop, and we have a real hard time stopping, especially in American culture. We like to go, 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 until we can't go anymore. And so this week we're talking about resting. And so once we've learned to stop, hopefully we can learn to rest. Think of Ecclesiastes chapter 3. To everything there is a season. And there is a reason. And there is a time to rest. A lot of this really, truly is, friends, about giving ourselves permission to rest. Even if it means that we have to put in our busy schedules a block of time that says rest. Psalm 23:2 says, He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. When you think of rest, what comes to mind? I'm not going to ask this rhetorically. So when you think of rest, what comes to mind for you? What is rest for you? Go ahead and shout it out if you want to. Sleep, nature, keep going. Sitting down. Especially if you stand up all day, huh? Yeah, well, so what comes to mind when you think of rest? What are those things that come to mind when you think of rest? Peace. Clearing mind, fishing. Yeah. All good stuff. See, each person is different when we think of rest. On one person, it might be reading a good book. Another person might be sitting with a lit candle and just being quiet. Other people is taking naps or walking the dog or playing catch with the dog, right? That might be restful for some. Other people, it's actually coming here on Sunday morning and visiting with old friends. That's restful. Each of us has a different way that we rest, that we think in our minds of what rest is. On this emotionally healthy spirituality course that Charlotte was speaking to you about this morning, there's the author is Pete Scazzaro, and he shares all these different things that has to do with Sabbath, and a lot of these things I'm talking about today are referenced in the class that you could take in the fall. And I want to show you what one thing that he says about rest is this morning. He says this about rest. Rest is whatever delights and replenishes you. Period. Rest is whatever delights and replenishes you. So what delights and replenishes you? What do you delight in? Singing. Food. Hey. Yeah. Camping. Yeah, so was there something that replenishes you, that restores you, that makes you feel new again? Coffee. Golf. Look, yeah, see, now we're getting somewhere, right? So rest isn't necessarily doing nothing, okay? Although that might be what you need. Rest can be lots of different things to lots of different people. And so when we talk about Sabbath day, and the commandment says you will do all your work in 6 days, but on the seventh day you shall not do any work. There's a difference between not doing any work and not doing anything, right? Because for some of us, for me for sure, I try to on my Sabbath day to not have anything related to do with work. Now, I want to make one thing clear. There are things that we have to do sometimes as parents who have children, because we have to take care of our kids, right? And that might be feeling like work, but that's okay. We chose to be parents. There are other obligations that we have to take care of. Maybe we're a caretaker for our mom or our dad, and we have to take care of them, right? And so we try to do these things while remaining in a Sabbath mindset, while remaining restful and remembering that God is with us in everything that we do. But some of these tasks are unavoidable, right? Pets, kids, attendants. But rest is also about clearing our mind and not really thinking about things that are work. So before we can go into a Sabbath, before we can stop and truly rest, we have to think about what bogs us down. What about work makes us not very happy and unrestful? And we want to not do those things on our Sabbath day, right? And so for me, Sabbath takes planning, because if I'm going to take a Sabbath day, I want to make sure I'm going to work a little extra hard a couple days beforehand so that I know that I can take my Sabbath day and fully be in a restful mindset and spirit. That means, making sure I have coffee, because to wake up on Sabbath without coffee would be horrible. Okay? That means making sure the laundry is done before my Sabbath day so I don't have to do the wash, because that bogs me down. It's not enjoyable to me. For me, it also means not answering emails. Emails are the bane of my existence. I'm telling you all, I delete so many emails a day, I don't even know where they come from. It means not answering text messages when it comes from work. Sorry if you hurt feelings. It also means not responding to any social media that has to do with church or work. Matter of fact, I try to limit my social media because it's hard not to be involved with someone from church or work when I'm on there. So what is it that sucks your life away? And then think about those things, plan ahead, get them done beforehand so that on your Sabbath day you can truly rest, and delight and contemplate in who God is in your life. Right? So it's going to take a little bit of planning here. Psalm 37, 7a says this: "Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for Him." Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for Him. We talked a little bit about this last week, and in order to be still, we have to stop. But for some of us, in order to be still, it takes 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, before our minds will stop running around. I understand that. I get that. But how are we doing that? How are we planning ahead so that we can truly make the Sabbath day restful and not so stressful that we never want to do it again? Anybody here ever go on vacation? Maybe once in your life? So did anybody here plan before you went? Some of us just go, right? And that's cool. But that stresses me out to do that. I like to plan. My wife is a planner as well. That's why we work well together, because we like to plan. We probably over-plan. But in order to go on vacation, excuse me, in order to go on vacation, we have to make sure things are done at the household before we can leave, right? And I don't know about you, but we always do like a big deep clean of the house before we leave, so when we come home to a clean house. Because the last thing I want after vacation is to have to come home and clean the house. And I also know as soon as we get home, stuff's going to do this, out of the car, right? And so we want to be able to just come in and take a vacation from our vacation. But it takes planning, right? I have to make sure things are in order. I have to make sure the dogs are taken care of. We have to make sure all the stuff is done at home. I have to make sure that there are certain things done at work before I can leave, so that when I come home, I'm not playing catch up, but I can just step in stride and be ready to go, right? There's all these things that we have to think about before we can leave and go on this vacation. The same thing happens for us every single week, because we're supposed to take a Sabbath day every 7 days. That's like a mini vacation every single week. And so if we're not planning ahead through the course of our week, we're not going to be able to fully stop, rest, delight, and contemplate in who God is on our Sabbath day. And this is why people get so anxious about Sabbath, because it's just one more thing to add to your list for the rest of the week to figure out how you can do it. But I'm telling you, I promise you, if you make this a rhythm of your life, if you make this a weekly practice in your life, it will become like breathing. It's just normal. I don't think about breathing. It just happens. When we begin to have a Sabbath day, when we begin to truly be able to rest and delight and contemplate in who God is, I'm telling you, it renews the soul. We begin to remember who God is. We begin to remember what it is like to be still and know who God is in our life. To begin to exalt God among who we are, to begin to exalt God among the nations, begin to exalt God throughout the earth, to begin to exalt God in our lives, because sometimes, I don't know about you, for some reason I feel like I put myself on a higher pedestal than I should be on. And it's a great reminder to me who I am as a child of God and who God is as my Heavenly Father. And it's nice to have a rest and to realize that if I stop, the world will not fall apart. Because the world is in God's hands, not mine. So this week I invite you to rest. I give you permission to rest. I don't know if that holds any weight in your household. But if you need permission from somebody, I'll give it to you. And even more than that, God gives it to you. Matter of fact, God commands it. So find time to rest, to delight, and to contemplate in who God is this week. Whether that's for 24 hours, whether that's for 24 minutes or 24 seconds. Start where you can and do that. Amen. Friends,